Psychosis are a post-rock band from London. In 1986 they were formed. In 1994 they released an album. In 1996 they were unformed. And then in 2004 they were reformed, kind of, but as a solo project for Graham Sutton, who was the lead guy anyway. Apparently he'd been working at doing some recording in the years up to that announcement. And so that second album was released under the name Psychosis in 2004, but then it's effectively the project has become dormant since 2005. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the first album by Psychosis. It came apparently after quite a bit of time as a band, some singles and some whiffling, some kind of to and froing, and it was recorded in a church, which is interesting. It's my first encounter with them as a band, and so therefore, obviously, it's my first encounter with this album. And I had no idea what to expect. I hadn't got any preconceptions, and I didn't read anything about them before I had my first listen. So this is what I often do, particularly for stuff that I don't know anything about, is that I have one listen through before I do some research, then do some research, and then have a second listen through. I still, now, having listened twice and having read up on them, find it hard to pigeonhole this, or to give you, which means I'm going to find it hard to talk about it in ways that actually give you a really good impression of what it's like, because it's unusual. I'm going to confidently state that it's post-rock, and the basis of saying that is because that phrase was coined by music journalist Simon Reynolds for Mojo magazine when reviewing this album. So if there ever was an album that was post-rock, it must be this. But what does that actually mean in terms of this? So I'm aware that genres and descriptions like this, they're really useful for reviewers like me. They're also really useful for labels and publishers who are trying to sell things in terms of how they market them. But in terms of the bands, they're often really not that bothered. And sometimes you find that there's a genre label that's attached to a band, and the band themselves say, no, we reject that idea. We're not of that. Even when, objectively they really are sometimes. And this is all just kind of a preamble to the fact that I'm going to find this hard to describe because it's quite unique. So there's definitely interesting textures. Musically, it's very broad in terms of what it covers. And the genre names I'm going to chuck in here as elements that are part of this mix are alt-rock, classical, minimalism, space rock, soundscapes, noise, new age music, and dub-like grooves, although it doesn't sound like reggae, and jazz. And this is, I'm probably confusing you more than helping you by doing this. There's obviously normal band instruments being involved, but not all the time. There's often times when there's just one instrument playing. There's some very stripped back bits, and there's some very not. There's some quite full-on bits. There's use of more classical instruments, so things like flute, trumpet, strings, vibraphone, and to me, in my limited understanding, that's one of the defining, one of the kind of symptoms of post-rock is that use of more orchestral melodic instruments. It takes its time and paints with textures. It's been accused of being prog rock again, so I think they effectively said they didn't think of themselves as prog rock. I'm going to take a very small sidebar here and say that I think they're not prog rock with a capital P, just because of the timing and the way that prog rock has become something that isn't in itself progressive. It has become a set of different approaches and ways it sounds, but particularly the complexity that's used. Now, there is quite a bit of complexity here, but it's not in the same way that modern prog would feel. So I would claim that they're progressive with a small p, and so don't fit under prog rock. It's musically complex, very interesting. There's lots of rhythm complexity, there's structural complexity, there's harmonic structures are unusual at times and quite interesting. And it goes from, there's lots of different stuff in here, but it includes interleaved arpeggios in a way that reminds me of minimalism from contemporary classical music. I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit about that because my brother's an expert on this. To kind of wild guitar playing that reminds me of, partly because it's the same kind of sound, but also the same way of playing, like Jeff Buckley on the album Grace, and this kind of very unfettered and emotional playing. And this is the other thing that makes it less like prog rock, I think, is that it's very emotional. There's a lot of feel and feeling in what's been done here. It's not about the cleverness of the music, and the music is clever, but it's about building these textures and getting these feelings through. Just as another little note on here, I was pretty impressed by some of the recording of the drums, and I felt like it's some of the quietest bass drum playing that I've ever heard, and it's recorded in such a subtle way. It really works very well. On to the singing. So there is singing. The singing is generally mumbled, and it's kind of in a dream pop sort of vein. The words are interesting where I can make them out, but that's not in very many places. So my focus here is very much on the music. Probably my favourite bit is there's a groove that starts on the track Big Shot, which is really nice. And this is one of the bits that I kind of thought the word dub came in just because of the depth and thickness of the bass that's being used in here. So overall, it's a really mature album musically. It's interesting and it's different. There's a lot of disparate elements coming in here, but it works well as an album. And basically, I loved it. It was just great. I was entranced listening to it. So I would definitely seek this out again, and I'm probably going to go get a copy, like a permanent copy of my own. This is one of the reasons for me doing these reviews, is to discover excellent things that I've not heard of like this. So I like it. And I'd love to know what you think. So please, as always, I'm going to invite you to talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.